There comes a moment when you wake up and realize nothing is calling your name anymore. The music sounds hollow. The dreams feel borrowed. And the things you once loved now sit quietly, like strangers waiting to be forgotten. There is a particular kind of grief that no one teaches you how to name. It doesn't arrive with screaming sirens or public collapse. It doesn't shatter things dramatically. Instead, it seeps in slowly, like fog rolling through the rooms of your life, dulling the edges of everything you once felt vividly. One day you notice it in small ways. The book you used to lose yourself in now feels heavy in your hands. The hobbies that once made time disappear now feel like chores. The passions that once defined you now feel like stories you heard about someone else. And the most terrifying part is not that you're sad, it's that you're numb. You are still breathing, still moving, still functioning, but something essential has gone quiet inside you. This is the moment people rarely talk about. Not heartbreak, not depression in its obvious forms, not the cinematic breakdowns we recognize from movies. This is something quieter, more confusing, more isolating. This is the slow erosion of interest, the loss of desire. The strange, unsettling experience of no longer wanting the things that once made you feel alive. And when it happens, you don't immediately panic. At first, you tell yourself you're just tired, burned out, going through a phase. You promised yourself it will come back. The excitement, the curiosity, the hunger for life. You wait, you distract yourself, you scroll, you work, you survive. But days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and one morning you realize the waiting has become a way of life. Some people lose interest in everything they once loved, not because they are weak, lazy, or broken, but because they have been strong for too long. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from carrying expectations that were never yours to begin with. From living a life built around survival instead of joy. From constantly being okay for the sake of others, while slowly abandoning yourself. At some point, the mind learns a dangerous lesson. Caring hurts. Wanting costs too much. Loving deeply leaves scars that don't heal fast enough. So the psyche does what it has always done best. It adapts. It turns the volume down. It numbs the intensity. It teaches you how not to feel too much, because feeling too much once almost destroyed you. This is not apathy. It is protection. When you lose interest in everything you once loved, it's often because your nervous system is exhausted from years of emotional labor no one ever acknowledged. You learn to be responsible too early. You learn to be strong instead of safe. You learn to suppress disappointment, swallow grief, and postpone joy until things get better. But things didn't get better. They just got heavier. And over time, the part of you that knew how to feel wonder, excitement, passion, it learned to hide. People think passion disappears because life gets boring. But that's not true. Life doesn't become boring. It becomes overwhelming. Dreams start to feel dangerous when you've watched too many of them collapse. Hope begins to feel naive when reality keeps proving you wrong. At some point, it feels safer to want nothing than to want something and lose it again. There is a specific moment many people remember, though they rarely talk about it, when they realized the fire was gone. It might have been the day they stopped daydreaming. Or the day they realized they hadn't laughed deeply in months. Or the day they achieved something they worked so hard for. And felt absolutely nothing. No pride, no excitement. Just a quiet, hollow sense of, is this it? That moment doesn't scream. It whispers. It whispers, you're tired. It whispers, what's the point? It whispers, maybe this is just how life feels now. And so people continue. They wake up. They go to work. They respond to messages. They fulfill obligations. From the outside, they look functional, even successful. But inside, something essential has gone dormant. Not dead, just asleep. Buried under years of disappointment, unmet needs, and unspoken grief. One of the cruelest things about losing interest in everything you once loved is the shame that follows. You start to compare your present self to your past self. The one who was ambitious, curious, passionate, creative, the one who felt things deeply. And you wonder where that person went. You wonder if you failed them. You wonder if you ruined your own life somehow. You begin to believe that something is fundamentally wrong with you. But what if nothing is wrong? What if losing interest is not a flaw, but a signal? A signal that you have been living disconnected from yourself for too long. There are people who lose interest because they have been surviving instead of living. When life becomes about paying bills, meeting deadlines, avoiding conflict, and managing expectations, joy becomes an inconvenience. Passion becomes impractical. Curiosity becomes dangerous. The world slowly turns into a list of responsibilities instead of possibilities, and over time, the soul responds by shutting down parts of itself, not because it wants to die, but because it wants to rest. Others lose interest because they were never allowed to want things freely. They grew up learning that love was conditional, that worth had to be earned, that mistakes came with consequences instead of compassion. They learned to monitor themselves constantly, to be careful, to be small, to be useful. And when you spend your life living for approval, eventually your own desires begin to feel foreign. You stop asking what you want, because you were never taught that the question mattered. Some lose interest after trauma. Not the kind people always recognize, but the quiet, cumulative kind. Emotional neglect, chronic invalidation, long-term stress, relationships where you were slowly erased, situations where you had to betray yourself just to survive. Trauma doesn't always show up as flashbacks. Sometimes it shows up as indifference, as emotional flatness, as the inability to care about things that once made your heart race. And then there are those who lose interest because they cared too deeply for too long. They loved intensely. They believed wholeheartedly. They invested emotionally without armor. And life, or people, or circumstances, took advantage of that openness. Disappointment after disappointment taught them a painful truth. Hope is expensive. So they learned to ration it, to withdraw emotionally, to exist without expecting much from anything, including themselves. This is where the world misunderstands people the most. From the outside, it looks like laziness, or ingratitude, or lack of ambition. People say things like, you just need motivation, or you need a new goal, or you're just not trying hard enough. But motivation doesn't disappear randomly. It fades when effort no longer feels meaningful, when progress feels pointless, when the cost of caring outweighs the reward. You don't lose interest in everything you once loved because you stopped being capable of joy. You lose it because joy stopped feeling safe. There is a quiet sadness in realizing that the things that once made you feel alive now feel distant. It's like revisiting a childhood home and realizing it no longer fits you. The walls feel smaller. The memories feel heavier. You stand there, surrounded by echoes of who you were, wondering why you can't feel the same magic anymore. And the worst part is not the loss itself. It's the loneliness of it. Because how do you explain to someone that you're not exactly depressed, but you're not okay either? That you're not hopeless, but you're not hopeful? That you're not broken, but something inside you has gone quiet? There is no simple word for this state of being. So most people stay silent. They carry it alone. At night, when the world is quiet, this loss becomes louder. You lie in bed scrolling through memories, through old photos, through versions of yourself that look more alive than you feel now. You wonder if you'll ever feel that way again. You wonder if you wasted your potential. You wonder if this numbness is permanent. But here's the truth most people never hear. Losing interest in everything you once loved does not mean you are empty. It means you are depleted. And depleted things don't need judgment. They need rest. They need gentleness. They need time. The part of you that loved deeply, dreamed wildly, and felt intensely did not disappear. It retreated. It went quiet because it learned that the world was not always safe for softness. It learned that passion could lead to pain. It learned that caring too much could cost you everything. So it protected itself the only way it knew how, by withdrawing. Healing does not start with forcing yourself to feel passion again. It starts with listening to the silence, with asking yourself what exhausted you, what disappointed you, what broke your trust with life. It starts with acknowledging that numbness is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of too much unfelt emotion. Sometimes, losing interest is the psyche's way of saying, you've been living out of alignment. Sometimes it's saying, you've been ignoring your own needs. Sometimes it's saying, you're carrying grief you never allowed yourself to feel. And sometimes, it's saying nothing at all. Just asking you to sit with yourself, without demanding productivity, passion, or progress. There is no quick fix for this state. No motivational quote, strong enough to resurrect what years of neglect wore down. What returns interest to life is not pressure. It's permission. Permission to rest without guilt. Permission to change without explanation. Permission to let old versions of yourself die so new ones can emerge. You may not fall back in love with the same things, and that's okay. You are not meant to be who you were forever. People grow, shed skins, outgrow dreams, and mourn versions of themselves while still moving forward. Interest doesn't always come back as a spark. Sometimes it returns as a quiet curiosity, a small moment of presence, a subtle feeling of maybe. And maybe that is enough for now, because even in this numbness, even in this loss of interest, you are still here, still breathing, still capable of feeling again, even if it doesn't feel that way yet. The absence you feel is not proof that life has nothing left to offer. It is proof that something inside you needs care, not criticism. So if you've lost interest in everything you once loved, don't rush yourself back into passion. Sit with the quiet, listen to what it's protecting you from. Be patient with the parts of you that went silent just to survive, because one day, slowly, gently, unexpectedly, something will stir again. Not because you forced it, not because you chased it, but because you finally allowed yourself to be human. And sometimes, that's where everything begins again.